movie. In fact, it might just be the best Marvel movie. Well, maybe. Let's get into it. By the way, this will be spoiler-free, so cool your jets. The movie picks up where the second one left off. Peter Quill is grieving over Gamora, and they're living in a planet called Nowhere, and they're in space, and there's a dog, and yeah. But when something tragic happens, the team embark on a quest to protect each other. Talk about vague. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty simple story. Something interesting that this movie does, though, and you probably already know about this, is it spends a lot of time on Rocket, the raccoon played by Bradley Cooper. And this doesn't even feel like a spoiler. It feels like even the posters are trying to be like, hey, this one is about the raccoon, please pay attention to the raccoon. The raccoon is probably gonna die. And this focus is definitely my favorite part of the entire thing. I've always thought the raccoon was an elephant in the room, a raccoon in the room, you might say, because what the hell is he doing there? So it not only felt extremely satisfying to finally see a proper backstory for this character, but for the backstory to be the meat of the film, it surprisingly worked. The CGI animals didn't look bad at all. The rabbit thing was really strange and unsettling in a great way. At a certain point, you have to ask if it was actually good filmmaking or if the animals just looked extremely cute. But no, I would say they actually do a really amazing job with these scenes. Rocket barely says anything in them, and yet you know exactly how he feels at every given moment. You believe the chemistry he has with these others. The warm cinematography is pretty. It's such an interesting way they shoot it because it looks really nice and friendly, but they're in such a terrible situation. It had me asking, is this really a Marvel movie? And then it cut back to the normal gang, and I was like, oh yeah, definitely, it's still a Marvel movie. I wouldn't say the present day stuff is all bad, but some of it is. The first 30 minutes or so of this movie did not work at all for me. Chris Pratt seemed uninterested in the character. It reminded me a lot of his plank of wood performance in Jurassic World Dominion. The humor wasn't doing much for me. The action was okay. The rest of the cast kind of did what they've always been doing. Everything that happens on or whatever it's called, I had mixed feelings about it. I like the colors. I like how fleshy the planet looks. It all looks somehow really good and also really bad. The CGI here looks like something out of a Spy Kids movie, and not in a charming way. It was such a frustrating feeling while watching it, because I loved it in theory, but I also couldn't help but feel taken out of the film by just how rushed some of this looked. I'm not a VFX artist, and I don't mean to discredit the countless hours all the talented post-production people put into this thing. It's more of a critique towards the studio, and having this feeling like, how does a studio with seemingly unlimited resources end up with scenes that look kind of rushed? Sylvester Stallone has a helmet on at one point, and it looks just terrible. Maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I'm not watching Marvel movies all that often, so just checking in with how they're doing when I went to see this movie, it just felt a little concerning. Like, wait, this is where we're at with these movies? The film just didn't really take off until it really knew what the story was. They kind of just dance around what they need to do, only slowly arriving at what feels like some sort of story, the ounce of potential out of this one area. A truly significant amount of time is spent on this planet alone, and you don't even notice that until it's over, which is pretty impressive. The third act brings things home in a pretty expected and over-the-top epic way. For as predictable as the film felt at times, they kind of got me and subverted my expectations way more than I expected, which was a pleasant surprise. This especially applies to the violence in this film. I know James Gunn can go there, but when watching these kinds of movies, anytime it seems like a character is about to get shot, the film will push back to prevent that from happening, because, you know, these are kids' movies at the end of the day. And that's what's so weird about this one, is because it's not a kids movie, but it is at the same time. And I weirdly love that about this movie. Sometimes it will do that and play it safe and not do the violence, and sometimes it'll show all of it. Sometimes you're like, oh my god, how is it still happening on screen? They let him do this? It's not